I cannot impress, thank you, God, but I would like to impress more about the point that please only add your name, university name, and email in the form. If you fill it in the chat, we can be assured, and not in the form, we will not acknowledge that you are there. So you will have to be very careful that you do it not in the chat, but in the form. Uh, this, as Gaur said, is a new module that we are starting today. It's module number 4 of the research series that we are conducting. And these we did introduction, in which we did the theories of research and AI and research. And then we had library search, another 2 sessions on how do you search the library for your writing and work, research work, literature review, and another very important session on research ethics. And today, with this session, we are starting the research methodology module, which will have at least another 4 sessions in the coming week. So we are very, very thankful to Adil for taking up this theme. This is an area where not many people and researchers are very sort of don't pay too much attention to this in publication, though scholarship of teaching and learning is a very powerful way of research. We have all heard the word action research. Action research is more sort of personal, and you are talking about dealing with a contextual personal problem at a specific time. But scholarship of teaching and learning takes that further to the wider audiences, and perhaps Adil will explain a bit more about that. Just to say that today, for the session today, we had over nearly 13,000 plus registrations, 11,000 plus national, and nearly 2,000 international from 120 countries and all the regions. And like, we are very, very honored in the credibility of a program, because from Africa, Asia, to North America, South America, to Australia, New Zealand, we see you sort of registering with us. So we are very, very thankful for your trust. The agenda, Adil will walk us through very briefly about Adil. And if you were a part of our, to-fro chit chat, he has been a colleague here, which I have missed him since he is gone. He was always very mindful of giving me feedback on how to improve myself. And there he is, landed up in exactly the job that I did, and now he's doing. And I wish him all the luck. He's right now at Calgary, finishes, at the Educational Development Consultant at the Taylor Institute of Teaching and Learning, that's similar to CLTR's, at the University of Calgary. And at Calgary, he's finishing his PhD in adult learning. I'm surprised, Adil, you did not go into educational development. Why just adult learning, if you could talk about that as well? And you lead the academic staff certificate program at Taylor's. And I would like to know about that as well. What in our own free time, what exactly does that mean? Because that's something we don't do, staff certification. And you support a range of teaching and learning. So your research interests, I think, lie in this area of scholarship of teaching and learning. And so we are very, very proud to have you. So over to you, Juan. Please unmute yourself. Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr. Oksana. That was very generous, I must say. And what an honor. Let me start by saying what an honor it is for me to get back to to CLT, or a platform that is provided through CLT. I have a 5 years long relationship working with you, Dr. Oksana, and whenever I describe my time at FC College, of course, Department of Education is one of the highlights But the second highlight for me is the collaborations and partnerships I developed with the CLT. If it was working through the service learning components, if you remember, or if it was faculty development aspects, I thoroughly enjoyed each one of those. And I'll take a moment to also welcome everyone to this session. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. Um, I will do my introductions very soon, but I would begin by actually asking you, do you see my slides on your site? Okay, lovely. So I'll begin with doing a land acknowledgement, which is very important for us, and I'll share with you a little bit on that in a few minutes. But let me first start by saying that I am joining you from University of Calgary, which is located on the traditional lands of the people of Treaty 7, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, the Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, Stoney Nakoda, and Tsuut'ina First Nations. And Stoney Nakoda also includes the Chiniki, the Bearspaw, and Stony First Nations. I would also like to acknowledge that City of Calgary, where the University of Calgary is located, is home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. Because we have an international audience, very quickly I'll share land acknowledgement, something that we do as part of Truth and Reconciliation here in Canada. Like many parts of the world, Canada was also colonized, and there was a lot that was taken away from the Indigenous people of Canada. And uh, very recently, actually, in 2015, there was a call made at the federal national level in Canada regarding truth and reconciliation, which involved embracing the traditional and indigenous practices in our day-to-day lives. And doing a land acknowledgement is one of the traditional indigenous practices that I embrace in my practice as I live, study, work, raise my family here in Calgary, Canada. Um, with that, I'll quickly go to my introductions. I think I can never top what Dr. Roxana has already shared, but very quickly, I am an educational development consultant here at the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning. It's a faculty position essentially, which involves doing some consultative leadership work on teaching development and growth, but also doing some research. And then I also teach in the academic staff certificate program that Dr. Roxana mentioned. And I also teach in the School of Education here, where I'm also completing my PhD. As I said earlier, I'm living in Canada, in Calgary, so which means I'm joining in this session at 12 a.m. In the night. It might not look like from my blazer and everything, but trust me, it is very late at night, way past my bedtime. But I have an enthusiasm that Dr. Mavish Raza has given me that, if you're doing it, you do it the right way, put up the performance. So that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes. We'll see how it goes. I've been associated with teaching and learning for past 16 years. I have taught in K-12 context. I've taught in post-secondary context. I've taught in Pakistan. I've taught in US. I've taught in Canada. And I was just counting the other day. I've worked at 7 different institutions globally, and in all 7 of those institutions, I've held teaching positions. My research interests, Dr. Zia talk about them to an extent. They involve teacher education, involving and engaging students as partners, and then curriculum internationalization as well. Towards the end of this presentation, I'll also share with you my contact information. If you are also interested in any of these topics, feel free to connect, and I'd love for any opportunity for us to collaborate in the future. I must say, it was a little oversight on my part. I actually had a little slide for your introductions as well. I was hoping to do a little waterfall chat activity, but now I learned that the chat is frozen, so I'll actually skip on this part. But maybe later on, if you do ask me some questions, please make sure that you share with me your name and role, and also the university, just so that I get an idea of who is the audience. I see there are about uh, 863 of you right now with us. So it'll be nice to see how the overall spectrum looks like in terms of the participation. So I'll skip these slides for now. And I'll get to the agenda. So introductions are done. I know it's not fair. I only get to introduce myself and not you, but we'll get to you in the later part. A big part of the session is actually talking about scholarship of teaching and learning. Dr. Zia, in her introduction, actually very briefly touched on that, and I 100% agree with her statement on how underrepresented it is as a research in many parts of the academic world. I mean, we do see a plethora of interest and developments coming out on the front of scholarship of teaching and learning, but it is only happening in certain pockets. It's not happening as equitably as we would like to see on a global stage. And I would like to touch on that a little bit as we will talk about defining SoTL on our responsibility as academics, and our little exploration with it in our own journey. So I will spend some time on that and actually utilize your wisdom in exploring that as well. But we'll get to that in later point. I'll get to some of the foundational principles that guide the SOTL practice, and also we'll get to the very process of it. In fact, in this session with me, you will actually do some practice on a very basic level on SOTL as well. So I want it to be a meaningful exercise where you actually take something away, not just like an idea what SOTL is, but actually something that you would be able to carry forward in your practice moving on. Then I'll talk about some the importance of ethics in this work, and then different guiding frameworks and methodologies that you can bring to your disposal as you do this work. And last but not the least, I have a few set of recommendations and next steps for you, which will provide a nice segue for us to get into some questions and answers. Okay, so before I get to tell you what scholarship of teaching and learning is, I would invite you actually to take a device out. If you have your cell phone, you have a QR code in front of you, you can actually just use that. And get to the Padlet, or if you are on your computer, you can actually type in that tiny URL that I provide there, and it will also take you to the same page. What I'm asking you is that in your own words, please describe what is scholarship of teaching and learning, and if this is the term that you have heard the first time, just take a wild guess. What do you think it is from the very word of it? In terms of using Padlet, when you land there, you will notice that on the bottom right side of your page, there's that plus icon. You click on that, and it will open a new dialog box, which will ask you to record your thought. You do that, and then you hit enter. Your post will pop up on the um, on the on the board that's there. I already see that some people have already commented and saying, I'm listening it the very first time. That's great. Thank you for letting me know. It is maybe a program to train teachers. It might be a program. We'll see that in a minute. And Somebody said, I have no idea. Somebody said, I have no idea, but I really want to learn about it. I love that. That's exactly why we're doing this session. Um, We also, oh, there's something about gaining expertise in teaching and learning. That's a good one. That is certainly one of the purposes of SoTL. Um, oh, now there's a whole range of drops coming up. So it seems like a lot of people are entering stuff right now. That's good. Somebody said it's a scholarly approach to improve teaching and learning. That's a good one. And somebody said it's an approach through which you expand your teaching and learning in a systematic way. Okay, we are getting more and more sophisticated there. That's nice. Okay, I see somebody said that this is how you learn how to teach. Okay, sounds good.
Uh, Adil, could you put the screen of the Padlet up so that we can see the responses as they come? Is it possible at your end?
It is very much possible. Let me
Oh,
just
that
switch
would
the
make it more
screen.
interesting, actually.
Hey, Dr. Sana, give me a thumbs up when you do see the screen.
Yeah, there you go.
So there's
But
a
it's
lot
not.
there now. There's someone who wrote that it's a practice in higher education for systematic investigation for teaching and learning. Okay, now you guys are making it just too good. Um, this is very nice. It's a scholarship of learning and teaching strategies to advance educational learning. That's excellent. Um, Somebody said, I've heard it for the first time, but it seems like it's a scholarship of learning where you investigate the student learning processes. I love it. This is the first time I've heard the word student there in the comments that I've read. It is very much possible that you have written it. It's just that maybe I have not read it. This is great.
This
Many
is
of you
very
have said,
impressive, actually, Adil, that so many of the participants are actively taking part in it. Can we
mhm.
leave these Padlets open for participants to sort of come back to even later and have a look at what everybody is saying?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the Padlet would be open. And what I
Okay.
can do is I can commit to you to also extract that and
Okay.
share some of the comments that we have received, just so that
Yeah.
whatever mechanism for a session follow-up you have, you are able to share some of that with the participants as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
We'll do that.
so what I'll do is I'll actually thank you so much, everyone, for your active participation there. It is very encouraging for me to see that we have a whole spectrum of engagement with scholarship of teaching and learning. We have people who know what it is and very have defined it very sophisticatedly with all the layers involved in it. And then we also have folks who have mentioned that this is the first time that they've heard of this term. This is honestly exactly that I was imagining. With SOTL, we have always the fraction of people who are very much interested in it, invested in it. They are exploring that. But then we also have whole range of people who are very active in research, but when it comes to the scholarship of teaching and learning, the engagement is rather limited. And it's not because of necessarily because the interest is not there. A lot of time it is because it is not as established as a recognizable practice in the academy in our respective contexts. And somewhere in different institutions, we are breaking that wall, and others we still have some distance to cover. But what I've seen so far on a Padlet, I just want to reiterate, it's very encouraging to see that we have some engagement there. Okay, so now I'm back to my original screen. Do you see the slides now? Is that
Yes.
okay? Okay. I see some heads nodding in positive, so that's great. Okay, let me just define SoTL. This goes back into 2011, but Hutchings and his team, they did a very foundational seminal work on that. So I actually took that definition to showcase here. There are more than one definitions there, and of course, there are different interpretations and approaches there as well, because it is in many ways an evolving practice and an emerging field. So people are exploring it in variety of different ways. But despite of that diversity and differentiation in different approaches within scholarship of teaching and learning, there's some foundational understanding. And I think this particular definition identifies that common understanding in a really good way. So it's an approach that marries scholarly inquiry to any of the intellectual tasks that comprise the work of teaching, which essentially includes designing a course, facilitating classroom activities, trying out new pedagogical ideas, advising, writing student learning outcomes, evaluating programs. When activities like these are undertaken with serious questions about student learning in mind, one enters the territory of the scholarship of teaching and learning. So, as you can see, the definition itself is quite comprehensive because when we use the word teaching and learning, that itself is a very comprehensive undertaking itself. There's a lot that unfolds within uh, within the spectrum of teaching and learning, all the way from planning and designing to course development to actually implementing the pedagogical interventions to then evaluating the students. All of that encompasses teaching and learning. And not just that, that is one course we are talking about. Within an institution, there's several layers in which teaching and learning plays its role. And those layers are, yes, course level, but then they're at the program level as well, then they're at the faculty level, then they're institutional level alignments too that we are after. And any of those investigations, any of those areas that you explore at any of those levels within the institution, if it involves student learning in one way or the other, it would fall under the scholarship of teaching and learning. But then there are some other aspects to it, which I will highlight next. So similar to that, Peter Felton, he came up with some principles that guide the SOTL practice. He said the scholarship of teaching and learning is extremely important to advance our practice of teaching and learning. But the problem is the scholarship of teaching and learning at times is not considered as rigorous, as intellectually demanding, as trustworthy as some of the other research projects that we undertake. And we know that in our respective contexts, I see many of you are academics, are and are well versed in your disciplinary context. And when I ask you about, okay, so you do research, almost all of you who have done your masters and PhDs and are in faculty positions, a big part of your day activity is to not just do research yourself, but also to support and supervise your graduate and undergraduate students in doing research. So when I ask you to do research, your answer would most likely going to be, of course. What kind of a question is that? It is our day to day. It is a very important part of our life. But if I take that question one step further and I ask you, when it comes to research, do you also research your teaching practice? The answer to that would be a whole range of different things. Some of you might actually do that. Some of you actually go back to your teaching practice and you ask some fundamental questions about your student learning, and you design a whole um, study, a whole research project in exploring that teaching and learning question. And if you're doing that, that's scholarship of teaching and learning. But if the answer to that original question that I had was, do you do research on your teaching practice? If the answer is no, That basically means there's a whole area in your practice that you are missing out on. And that does not mean that you're not improving your teaching practice. Absolutely, you most likely are. There's a lot in the teaching advancement that you get to do through your student interactions, through your reflections, through your critical engagement with the literature on teaching and learning. There's many ways you improve your teaching practice. Uh, but are you actually designing research on your teaching practice, which is another very important layer for your teaching growth? The answer to that, if it is no, this is exactly the session that you would want to join, because this is where you're not only going to learn what that is, I am actually going to get to the how part of it. There's some principles that actually provide the foundation to this. One of that is inquiry is focused on student learning. So a scholarship of teaching and learning project always have student learning at its center. Even if you're exploring your teaching, you are exploring your teaching through the lens of who is going to be ultimately benefiting from that, and that is student in your particular course or in your particular program or in your particular institution. It is always grounded in context. Context matter a lot. Within Pakistan too, right now, many of you are joining us from Pakistan, but I also know there are other international participants as well. There is a country level post-secondary context. Within that, every institution is different. Every institution has its own ethos and has its own culture on research, culture on teaching and learning. So when you are exploring a teaching and learning issue for your students, you have to take into consideration what your specific context is. And in that context, what is possible for you and what is not possible, at least at this moment. Then it has to be methodologically sound. I mean, most of you are researchers. I can't emphasize enough about the methodology. The trustworthiness, the validity, the reliability of your research comes from the strength of your methodological approaches. And that includes the data generation, that includes data analysis. It also, to an extent, includes your choices of your learning and your findings dissemination. Then it always is conducted in partnership with students. Of course, there can be different levels of partnership. One of the foundational element is that you are transparent about the research that you're doing on students with your students. So you communicate when you are collecting data, you communicate with your students, why are you collecting this data? And then as you collect it, analyze it, disseminate it, you actually loop back with the students as well. That's the basic level of partnership. Of course, you can actually take it take it further as well. Then it has to be brought to public. If it is a scholarship of teaching and learning, your research findings and learnings should be brought to public. That means it should be published, it could be presented in a session like this, it could actually be presented in some open session at your local institution. You can write a blog about it, but you got to share your findings just so that you get to invite other folks into the conversation. They can give you feedback, they can critique you, and they can engage in a conversation with you. Okay, moving on. SoTL compared to, if this is what scholarship of teaching and learning is, how is it different than from scholarly teaching and learning? Well, scholarly teaching and learning is you engaging with any scholarship on teaching and learning. For example, if Dr. Zia has done some research and I get to learn from that research and I bring some change in my pedagogy as a result of that, that's scholarly teaching and learning. But that's not scholarship of teaching and learning for me. I'm learning from somebody else's scholarship, but that's not my scholarship. It's different than action research because I'm looking at my context, but I'm not just solving my particular problem. I am um, looking at my problem in my context, but I'm sharing it with the larger context. So the goal is not just to solve the problem, the goal is to solve the problem and share it with others. It is different than disciplinary research, of course, because, for example, if you're doing a chemistry research, your chemistry research is a bench work. It looks very different than the scholarship of teaching and learning. And it is also different than the discipline based educational research because scholarship of teaching and learning, in its very nature, is interdisciplinary. So if I'm just randomly picking names here, if Kashif, for example, is a mathematician and wants to do this research, and I'm an educational developer with a background in education, the two of us can come together and bring our expertise into exploring students' learning in a mathematics classroom. So it's interdisciplinary in nature. What involves in a SoTL process? Okay, uh, it starts with defining a problem. And the problem has to be defined in your respective context. I'll get to that. It involves identifying the theoretical frameworks that will guide your work and practice and the methodology. Then it gets into developing mechanisms, right mechanisms for generating and analyzing data. And last but not the least, you share your learnings and findings. Let's look into that in detail a little bit. Defining a problem. Defining a problem actually has three steps to it. By the way, as of right now, if I ask you to think about the problems in teaching and learning and your context, you can actually identify a range of different things. You're like, oh, that's a problem, that's a problem, that's a problem. You have to think about, if you want to do a scholarship in teaching and learning, remember there's going to be a project around that. You have to think about, okay, there's too many problems. What is the one problem I can actually focus on and I can actually look into? What is possible for me as the next step? Ask yourself that. Think about the context there, think about what your approach is going to be, and think about the impact that it will have. When you have these three things identified, you can develop your research question. I'm going to skip the reflective moments because I think some of that will be touched upon later. But if it is possible on your screen, just take a screenshot of that. In this moment, as you think about it, as you think about your context and the teaching problems in it, what teaching and learning concern or an area or a problem in your context are you immediately thinking about? Can you articulate it in the form of a research question, which will be your SoTL question? Just take a screenshot of that question. I don't want you to do anything about it, but keep that question in mind because it is related to the next reflective moment that I'm going to take with you. Okay. The second thing is identifying frameworks and methods. Theoretical frameworks, they're important in any research. They're equally important when it comes to SoTL. You have to think about what is guiding your work. What is the school of thought that you're going to rely on? Behaviorism, constructivism, social cognitivism, social learning theory. What methodology are you going to employ? A quantitative methodology, a qualitative methodology, a mixed method? And then what data sources are you going to use? Of course, depending on your answers to those first two things, your data sources will have to be consistent with the nature of study that you're planning. Surveying, observations, interviews, within interviews, semi-structured, focus groups, range of different things you can do. And then Miller, Young, and Geo, they actually gave a very nice framework for you to think about, and that's what I mean when I say that it's a very interdisciplinary work. There's a whole range of methodologies that you can use, and there are a whole range of learning theories that you can employ in this work. So whatever you are comfortable with, you can actually do that. And not just about your comfort, it's also about the original research question. Now, take another screenshot here for the reflective moment too. Whatever question that you will think about your earlier SoTL question, and then identify what theoretical frameworks and methods you may utilize to explore that question. And it's okay if you do not have a question, just take a screenshot of this so that later on, as you're thinking about it, you know what moments you need to engage with. Then comes generating and analyzing data. That's a very important one. And I cannot underemphasize this. One of the biggest, as a SoTL research practitioner myself, one of the foundational problems I come across as I look into other peer-reviewed articles that I sometimes get to review is the transparency and the ethics and component. A lot of times with SoTL research, people think that they don't have to, for example, go to the ethics board for approval to collect the data from their students. That is completely inappropriate. Like any research involving human subjects, SoTL research also require an institutional ethics review. If you're and for that I you know there for Pakistan, for example, there's a guidance that HEC provides, and then there are also institutional review boards that can provide you guidance on what kind of ethics approval you would need. But I cannot emphasize enough that you need that. In fact, if anything, you need it even more, because here you are doing research on and with your students, and that can get very complicated because you have a very special relationship with your students where you carry a lot of power in terms of grading them, a lot of those things. So you actually have to make it even more transparent. Okay. Then take a reflective moment three here. Keeping in view your earlier frameworks and methods, how will you generate and collect data? And also, as you're thinking about the data generation, think about how you would analyze data. Then final thing, how are you going to take it public? Now that you have explored your topic, now you have some learnings. Of course, you want to make a pedagogical change as a result of it, but how are you going to benefit people like me? You have done this incredible research, and I want to learn from it. How are you going to take it to the people beyond yourself to actually also learn from it and also provide you feedback? So that if you have missed out on anything, you get an opportunity to have other people provide further information for you to consider. And in that, take your learnings public. You get support, you get critique, you also get feedback. And in terms of where to disseminate it, really any public platform you can disseminate. Of course, I'm a scholar and I'm a researcher. I'll say go for publications, go for peer-reviewed journals, and there are many peer-reviewed journals that specifically focus on SOTL. I've actually mentioned two of them there. I have actually published in both of them. IJAD, which is the leading educational development journal, is called International Journal for Academic Development, and then the other one is International Journal for Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And then also there are some conferences where you can go to. iSOTL is a big one. This year it's happening in New Zealand. And then POD is another big one. It's US focused. And then STELI is Canadian focused, which is also Scholarship of Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. I've participated, presented at all three excellent platforms for you to explore scholarship of teaching and learning more if possible. Then finally, take that last moment when you have collected the data and if you have analyzed it in a good way, how would you take your learnings and findings public? Now, very quickly, I am going to go into a very important final piece, actually. Um, why do we want to do a SOTL research? Look, I am assuming that right now I'm having a conversation with people like myself, who are faculty members, who are academics, who have responsibility in their labs, in their research side of things, and they also have responsibility with their teaching. Research we all focus on, especially when it comes in disciplinary research, because that's why we are chemists, that's why we are physicists, that's why we are economists. That is the field that really excites us. But then other very important part of us being an academic is our teaching practice, our students who come to us in our institutions to learn from us. Scholarship of teaching and learning provide us a systematic way to actually look into our teaching and student learning with this idea of further growth and development. And scholarship of teaching and learning actually allows you as an academic to not just further develop your research side on the disciplinary end, but it also allows you to develop a research side to your teaching as well. So when you do that, you're not just a teaching practitioner, You are a teaching scholar practitioner. And I think that is the transition which sets you apart from other academics. I am telling you, very few people so far do it, but those who do it, they do not return away from it. They thoroughly enjoy it. They see the benefits of it in their teaching and also in their scholarship. And most importantly, they see an impact of this in student learning. So these are few outcomes. You advance the culture of teaching and learning, you expand the student learning, you inform the pedagogical change and development, and most importantly, you take the discourse on teaching and learning forward, not just in your institution, but also globally. This is the same thing that I said. An institution is not just your course. An institution have multiple levels of complexity. Your course is a micro level at which a change happens or the teaching and learning conversation happens. But what happens in a course is informed by what are the cultures and ethos of teaching and learning in your department, which is the meso level. And they are informed by what is happening at the institutional level, which is the macro level. And then what is happening at the institution is informed by national, international, disciplinary, interdisciplinary priorities and policies and changes. So you have to think about all of those levels as you think about your engagement with teaching and learning in your very specific context. With that, that is all. But before I get to everything that I've cited there or I've mentioned few names. I've included the references for you to consult. Feel free to take a screenshot if you want this right away. But I am assuming Dr. Zia can correct me if I'm wrong. But you will be shared the PowerPoint later on. Is that correct, Dr. Zia?
Yeah,
Oh, oh,
absolutely.
lovely. So the other thing, if that is true, the one resource that I would really like to share with you is the U Calgary SoTL on online module. Of course, I am at U Calgary, so I would share the resources that we have here. And this is a very self exploration sort of a platform. If you want to just learn more about it, go to this module. It has 3 different lessons. It's free of cost. You go through it, and some of the things that I've already mentioned, you will get to further redevelop some of your insights on that. Please go ahead and do that whenever you have time. I think that would be excellent. And
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah,
just
yeah.
one second, Dr. Zia. Sorry about that. And then also, if I'll take some questions now, but I just want to take a moment of gratitude for all of your presence here. If you would want to connect with me, my email address is there. And then also another QR code is there for you to connect to me via LinkedIn if there is ever anything that you want to talk about. With that,
Perfect.
thank you very much.
Wow. Adil, do you know, just today, me and myself and Mavish were talking about publishing our work. I've not tried to do that all the time I've been here. And you have given us a lot of leads for where to go. Thank you so much. Very well explained. And I think, Mavish, if you're ready with the questions, please. I see that a lot of questions, Adil, are actually about if you are belong to a certain discipline, can you still be an SOTL researcher? I think that's an obvious answer, but perhaps you could explain why for SOTL you do not have to be an educational person. Please talk about that.
Absolutely. I think whoever has asked those questions, they're excellent questions to ask because those are the first questions to ask. So right now, you are doing research in your discipline. And here I am saying, hey, by the way, you can do this interdisciplinary research called Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. And then you're thinking, but I am a biologist. I am a mathematician. All the research I've done is in these disciplines. Can I do this as well? The quick answer to that is absolutely yes. In fact, it is you who will do it and not an educationist who will do this research, because educationists do educational research, like you do mathematics research, chemistry research, physics research. It is all of us who do scholarship of teaching, because all of us do teaching. If you are an economist and you are teaching macroeconomics or microeconomics, in that case, only an economics faculty member can do a research on how teaching should be done in the discipline of economics. What could be the signature assessment methods when it comes to economics? If Dr. Ruxana or myself would want to do that, we would never be able to do that good of a job as you as an economist will be able to do. And you extend that to any field. You are a subject matter expert, and you are the one who are in the best position to explore how teaching of that subject matter should also be approached. Of course, now that was the first part. The second part is we also have trained educationists who can help you, who can hold your hand in this process. Now, in some institutions, they are more available than the others. So I don't want to make this assumption that every institution has this expert sitting. For example, like right now, this platform is provided to us through Center for Learning and Teaching at Forman. So there's a whole team at CLT who are trained professionals who can work with faculty members in doing this work and supporting this work. Maybe other institutions do not have that, but right now you're just one email away in finding partners for your research. So if you think that this is something that you're excited about, you have a good question that you really want to explore, you can connect with people who can help you with that. So I'll just stop there because I think that is sufficient for now. But if you would have any further sub questions to it, feel free to connect.
So thank you so much, Adil. I'm gonna take up the questions now. Some of the questions, of course, they give you a very positive feedback, the comments, and some questions are grouped together. They concern students' role in SOTL. So we have three different questions from different people. Neha from Government College, University, Lahore, Dr. Sayyeda Nouri, Government Murray College, and then Amber Shehzadi from FCCU. Their questions are about students' role in SOTL research and how can they help to improve the process.
They're great questions, and Mavish, thank you so much for also taking their names and their institutions. Always nice to recognize where they belong from. Yes, in fact, as I said, one of the core principles of SOTL research is the partnership with students. Now, depending on who the students are, in your context, you get to decide to what extent you want to engage in. For example, I was talking about I've published research in, for example, International Journal of Academic Development. That was a sort of research, and it was actually on student as partners, but we looked at it where we engage students as partners in the educational development work. But that is, we were able to do that because we have some funding available to actually hire students to do some educational development work with us. And we benefit a lot from it because we get the student perspective in that work, which is extremely important because all of the teaching and learning work is about students. So when we have student perspective, it offers very valuable insights. But the other end to that is students were getting paid for their work. Now we had the funds to support that. You might not have it. So in that case, I would not say that you partner with students and actually don't get to pay, you don't pay them for their service, their time, and all that. Then that basically means your engagement with them is going to be ethical and respectful in a way that, for example, if you're doing a SOTL project where you're generating some data through them and with them, you communicate them what that is going to look like, what would be the extent of their participation in it, if how would their participation be anonymized, if it is not going to be anonymous, how it will be recognized in a good way, and then also very importantly, if you are taking their time and you do not have enough funds, what are other avenues through which you're going to acknowledge and recognize uh, 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 their service that they have provided? So I think those are all important aspects, but the student engagement is at the center of this. The more you have that, the better the SoTL work would be. But you get to decide about your reality, and in that reality, what is possible for you.
Thank you so much. I just want to quickly build on Adil's response. In our context in Pakistan, naturally, we do not have too many funds to engage students in research. But remember, all your classroom-based inquiry, when students collaborate with faculty on evaluating different kind of pedagogical interventions and also student-led educational projects, all of this is an example of sort of in your context. And of course, you have to stay in line with the institutional review board guidelines to make your research as ethical as possible, reinforcing what Adil has just said. So the next set of questions, Adil, they concern the evaluation of SOTL work, which is it's a very valid question that, and it comes from Sumbul Sajjad from Higher Education Department. Uh, and she's asking how can the impact of SOTL work be evaluated beyond student feedback, particularly in terms of long-term learning outcomes and institutional change.
Mhm. That's an excellent question, Sumbul. I think there are layers to that as well. I think first of all, a lot of this work is going to be iterative in nature. What does that mean? Iterative means that you would try out certain interventions, you will learn from it, that will result with some pedagogical change. Then you will test that change, you will see how that goes, and then you will generate new data. Then you will go back into designing another pedagogical. So it's ongoing in nature. It's cyclical, it's iterative in nature. So the very process of SOTL also has evaluation built in it. In its it is in its very nature that you will be revisiting and revising and continuously improving. But in evaluation, one thing that I didn't see in your question, but I still want to address it, Sumbal, is that because it's a work of research and it takes a lot of time and commitment. So when you are putting in all of that time and commitment, you also want that to be recognized by your peers and most importantly, the people who supervise you, your chairpersons, your deans, and all of that. And I don't know how things have changed in the FC College context or some other institutions, but scholarship of teaching and learning is now, because it's a peer reviewed work, especially if you're going for these conferences that I've talked about, or if you're publishing in these peer reviewed journals on that, it's the work that not only just gets recognized and adds to your profile as an academic and then becomes a reason for you to apply for those promotions and tenures. It also sets you apart as this distinct academic who is not just excellent and incredible in their respective discipline, but also is a master of teaching and learning. Uh, and how are you master and expert of teaching and learning? Hey, how many people can say that they have a peer-reviewed research on teaching published in a peer-reviewed research journal? So that evaluation itself on from that institutional lens is very important. And then when you have something like this, I'm already looking at this little smile on Dr. Zia's face. What then people like Dr. Zia, who is so passionate about teaching and learning, they're like, oh, at my institution, there are these 20 faculty members who have this work published. People like Dr. Zia would take it everywhere. So, I mean, and then that adds to the institutional change and that adds to the cultural change within the institution as well. But you don't worry about the institutional change. You worry about your small thing that you can do and then let it play out for a larger change eventually.
Thank you so much. That was quite comprehensive. So the next set of questions are about how would we differentiate between SOTL and action research and also other forms of literary research? These questions are from Misbah Gul Abbasi, University of Punjab, Sonam Dendup, the university name is missing, and Muhammad Amin Nadeem, University of Foggia, Rome, Italy. So, what's your take on this?
I think that's a great question. Honestly, the answer to that is in that slide of Peter Felton that I shared with you. This is a 2013 article that he wrote, and is a very popular, very well-established piece in the world of scholarship of teaching and learning, and that those principles draw the distinction of what SoTL is in comparison to the other types of research. For example, action research is for you to take an action in a systematic, structured way in your specific context. You don't have to take it to the public. You don't have to publish anything about it. But scholarship of teaching and learning, one of the foundational principles is you have to take it public. You have to engage with other colleagues, peers, uh, to support them, to take feedback from them, most importantly, to take critique from them. That's a scholarly endeavor, and that's different from action research. So goes with, like, I can go with each of those, but really, if you stick to those principles, know with assurance that you're doing scholarship of teaching and learning.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adil. So, basically, I'm sorry, I have a visitor here.
Oh, no
Sorry for
worries.
the distraction. Yeah.
No,
So
no
the
worries.
next set of questions is about, again, about the differences in research. And this one is from Ayman Sayed. She's asking that how does the scholarship of teaching and learning research falls in qualitative or mixed method research? So she's basically asking what sort of research strategy should we use?
That's a great question. And what was the name again, Mavish?
It's Aman.
Amen. That's a
Aman
great question,
Sayed.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Mavish. Amen. That's a great question. Really, it depends on your research question. If, for example, you're trying to look into the perceptions of students about something, and for you, the way you want to capture student perceptions is through some sort of a Likert scale survey, of course, there will be a quantitative aspect to it. If you also, with the Likert scale, want to add some open-ended question, it will become a little bit of a mixed method because there's some quantitative data at your disposal. You also have some qualitative data. If you just, for example, want to do some interviews with students about something that they're experiencing or they're going to experience, and you're doing just the qualitative interviewing, that will be a qualitative research. So depending, again, that with those reflective moments that I shared with you, and that's,
Hmm.
I'm glad, Amen, that you asked that. See, the reason I wanted you to take a screenshot for each of those reflective moments is that when you answer the first moment and you come up with the research question, then you go to the second one. Your second one is dependent on the first one. You cannot come up with a theoretical framework and a methodology in a vacuum. When you have identified that this is my research question, your moment two of methodology would have to be consistent with your question. Then the third piece of data generation and analysis have to be consistent with your larger method. And last but not the least, how you communicate it has to be consistent with that overall picture that you had drawn for yourself, starting from your research problem to your methodology, to your data analysis and generation, and then last but not the least, the actual sharing of it. So what happens is you would have to develop that blueprint, that outline first. That's why I wanted you to take that screenshot so that later on, when you're thinking about it, s- go through those reflective moments, populate your answers to those. And when you'll have that, really, you will have a research proposal at your hand. You'll have a research question. You'll have your frameworks, theoretical frameworks guiding that, larger methodologies, actual data sources, and last but not the least, your plan for dissemination. That's your research proposal right there.
Yeah, absolutely. We have another question which can relate to this one. Do you have any tools that you want to share with the audience? Any free tools or platforms recommended for analyzing data, especially for scholarship of teaching and learning? And this question has come from Rabia from Government College, Women University, Bahawalpur.
Rabia, that's a great question. The best part about scholarship of teaching and learning is, as I said, it's interdisciplinary, so it draws from different disciplines. If you're doing quantitative research, you will of course use some quantitative data analysis tools like R, like SPSS, whatever you have available. I, for my qualitative pieces, I actually am quite traditional in my qualitative research. I really like to take a highlighter and take the printout of the transcripts, and I go crazy on that, and make my own themes and analysis. I love doing that. That's the best part for me. But I have also used NVivo when I have a crunch of time. So I would just say that whatever is available to you, when you see, that's not as important also, honestly. When you have figured out your question and your data sources, and you have got the data in terms of analysis, all you have to do is you go to your library, and you, whoever is the expert there, you say, this is the kind of data I have, and I want to use whatever is available at the university as a support software, and they will guide you what is available, and whatever is available, you use that. So it's not about like the good practice on it. Of course, some softwares will be better than the others, but they will be better in different contexts. So everything has a role of its own. I, for example, really also enjoy just printing out my transcripts, having highlighter, and just making it dirty.
Yeah, the manual coding. So, all those of you who are asking about free AI tools and free tools which you can integrate during the scholarship of teaching and learning work, I would strongly suggest that you go back to our YouTube channel and you catch up on the previous webinars in which we have talked about research tools and integrating AI in research. Because a scholarship of teaching and learning is also a sort of research, right? So it doesn't matter what your aim when it comes to the operations within the research process, you can use any sort of tool. So please view that webinar to get better idea about the range of tools available there. Apart from this, we have the last set of questions here, which talks about the impact of scholarship of teaching and learning on institutional development. So how do you see the impact there?
Mavish, I think to an extent we touched on that earlier as well. I mean, I think a lot of local level, micro level research, when it comes in concert with each other, it develops a culture of scholarship on teaching and learning within an institution. Then more people at the central level not just talk about it, they also create opportunities. Like for example, Mavish, when you were saying earlier about the very reality of Pakistan, that funds are rather limited, um, um, that would actually change through some of the good scholarship coming out. And for some of that to change, and some of that is already changing. I, for example, know someone who actually met at a pod conference from Pakistan in November, in US, who actually got his funding from the pod conference itself to not just do the research that he was presenting there, but also actually travel there. So, I mean, it depends on, and it was a very, notable academic in their respective field as well. So, I mean, when their funds limited, there are ways that you can open certain doors for you. And when one person opens a door and walks through it and show a good result from it, others follow. And then, of course, eventually institution also creates pockets of support for them. And for example, I'm using FCC example because, of course, I've been there, and also because this platform is organized by them. But then I look at CLT now, and I see Dr. Ruxana would agree with me. There was a time it was just Dr. Ruxana. And now we have a team of people. So clearly, because of the impact that you have generated, the university and the institution has seen value and have created resources and support systems there. So again, I mean, in SoTL, you don't worry about the institutional change. You know it will happen. You worry about what in your context is needed to be explored and what you can do about it, and how you can do it, how you can approach it in a good, ethical way. When you do that, you'll see more doors would open.
Thank you so much, Arun. That answers it all. And just to reinforce what he said, scholarship of teaching and learning is all about creating a bigger impact, an impact which is more than just our immediate context, more than just our own institution and our own publications, but it's with the intention of advancing the knowledge in the current knowledge base. And scholarship of teaching and learning is, in its infancy stage, I would say, in Pakistan. But let's initiate discussions around this. Thank you so much for joining this session, for taking the key
I
points
think
from
there's
our
Babish,
conversation. Yeah.
one last question which you might have done because I was busy elsewhere, where somebody from Italy who University of Telepagesso, I think, if I'm said, and I thought it was very interesting given what we're talking about. And I'm not very sure if I understand the question is, Adil, tell me if you make sense. In SOTL research, especially when working within ethical or privacy concerns, is it acceptable to use synthetic data to model? Of course, you would use data that's anonymous if you do not want to synthetic data to model or simulate student learning outcomes. And if so, how can we ensure that the findings remain meaningful and applicable to real classroom context? And I am sorry, but I did not understand synthetic data, the word, if you could elaborate on that.
I'm
Did you
gonna
understand the question? I thought that synthetic data would mean sort of maintaining confidentiality by another form, representing something in another form. I thought that would be very ethical and it still would be meaningful. Am I reading it right?
um
Can I
I think
answer this?
yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Mavish.
Synthetic data is basically data that mimics real world situations. It's
yeah,
not true or authentic data.
yeah.
So, yeah, and Adil can respond to it from the SOTL point of view.
Yeah, no, I think that was my interpretation too, Mavish, and I think it's very relevant, especially when it comes to simulated research projects where you have simulations, and through that, it's very prevalent in nursing research where a lot of good work is done in simulations. So I see where you're coming from, and I would say that of course, in SOTL you would want to engage with real students and get their perspectives, and you want to do that in a good way. And if you have the institutional review board at your disposal, you go through the ethics guidelines and you take your steps accordingly. But let's just say you don't have that, and you want to, and you do your research in that simulative world, and you have some data available that mirrors the real student data points. You feel free to use that as well. And then, but know that when you would do that, you will describe the data as such. And then your analysis and extrapolations coming out of it would also be guided by that. I don't see a point why it cannot be used. It can be used. Would it be ideal? Maybe in certain circumstances, yes. But of course, we would love that you would work with real students, with real issues, with real thoughts and ideas. But sometimes the nature of the subject is such, or the nature of the topic is such, that you would want to use the synthetic data. That is equally fine as well. But then it would have its own delimitations that you would be working within.
Yeah, and especially when you have to create a bias in the data. Sometimes we don't have a bias naturally in our own context, especially if we are working in a very narrow context. So I think synthetic data can help researchers expand the view of the research by including bias in a synthetic manner. And again, it goes back to the IRB standards of your institution, how you want to cater to it and address synthetic data. But thank you so much, Adil. Dr. Roxana, if there's no further questions from your end, I think we have covered everything that the participant posted for Adil. And Adil, you have received massive appreciation from all the participants in this webinar right now. We have crossed over 800, and congratulations on holding such a fantastic and successful webinar. Your performance was really good. So thank you so much. And thank you everyone for attending this webinar. I hope that today's learning must have added to your knowledge base, and you're going to engage in scholarship of teaching and learning to add value to the current fields of study, whichever discipline you're associated with. All the best, and follow us on LinkedIn, on our YouTube channel, and also stay tuned for more webinars. Thank you. Have a good day, all of you.
Thank you, Aunt. Thank you, Mavish. Thank you so much. Okay.